A few years ago, I packed the last of my things and drove away from the West Coast, heading about 1,000 miles inland. The route I chose cut through the northern states, the kind of roads people only take when they're avoiding the busy highways. It was one of those drives where you pass through small towns, then long stretches of trees and open fields, and you realize how empty some parts of the country really are. The scenery was nice at first, but after doing that trip a few times, it started to blur together. The same lines of trees, the same faded signs, the same long, quiet miles. This was the last trip I had to make, with only a few boxers left in the trunk, and the car loaded more out of habit than need. I drove that whole day, and finally pulled into a small town around 6 in the evening to nap for a few hours. I woke up at 9, feeling okay, and got back on the road, ready to finish the drive. An hour out of town, everything changed. The dashboard lit up with warning lights and the steering felt wrong, heavy and unpredictable. At first it was little things, but within 5 minutes it got worse, to the point I knew I couldn't keep going. I eased the car onto the gravel shoulder and killed the engine. Of course it happened in the one stretch where there was nothing around. Just trees, darkness, and that kind of silence that presses against you. From having driven this route before, I knew the next town was at least an hour in either direction. No cell service, and definitely no gas station nearby. I sat for a minute with my head back against the seat and tried to figure out what to do. I know almost nothing about cars, so I walked around and looked under the hood hoping for something obvious. There was nothing. The car was as beat up as it looked, and probably done for. Standing there by the car, it hit me how creepy that road felt. The streetlights were few and far between, casting weak pools of light that barely reached past the shoulder. The trees seemed to stretch on forever, and the whole place was quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your skin feel tight. I remember thinking, real and half-joking, that I felt like I was in a horror movie. The only sensible option was to flag someone down and ask for help. A ride to the next gas station, a call to a tow truck, anything. So I leaned against my car and waited. After about 15 minutes, a car came. It slowed down and pulled up beside me, and a man rolled his window down. He looked like he was in his He had a cigarette and gave me a long look that felt more like he was checking me out than deciding whether to help. I told him what had happened to my car. He stared at me for a few seconds, kept checking his mirrors, and I don't know. Something about the way he looked made me uneasy. It wasn't the kind of help I wanted to be picky about, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with him. He said, "Hop in. I'll give you a lift to the next town. I don't mind helping someone out tonight." I hesitated. I didn't want to offend him, but my gut was screaming no. I told him, "I actually have a buddy coming. He should be here in a few minutes." He made a small, not friendly smirk, nodded, and drove off. I watched him go and felt a silent relief. That car ended up being the last one that passed for a long time. I didn't think the road was that isolated, but I was stuck there in the middle of the night. And it felt a lot lonelier than I'd expected. I almost fell asleep against the car when headlights appeared, this time coming from the direction I was headed. I waved and the car slowed, pulling up beside me. The vehicle looked familiar at first, like the same dark sedan that had stopped earlier, but in the dim light it could have been any similar car. When the window rolled down, there was a woman behind the wheel. She looked like she was in her late 20s. She offered help right away, but she had this nervous smile, like she didn't want to be there offering it. I told her I needed a ride to anywhere. The next gas station, a town, whatever. She unlocked the passenger door and I got in. As soon as I settled into the seat, something felt off. She didn't speak. She stared straight ahead with wide eyes and didn't ask what happened to my car. I tried to keep things light and said, "Thanks for stopping. I don't know what I'd do if you hadn't." She didn't answer. She just drove, and we sat in silence. The quiet between us was heavy and uncomfortable, but I told myself she was probably just nervous about picking up a stranger. We drove like that for maybe 20 minutes. Then I saw a sign. A gas station 2 miles ahead. Relief washed over me and I told her she could drop me off there. She nodded but never looked at me. The closer we got, the more I watched her. Her eyes flicked once toward me and then back to the road. There was a fear in them that made my stomach twist. I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. Movement in the rearview mirror. I turned and looked, and my whole chest dropped into my shoes. In the back seat, Hunched down so he was out of sight, sat the man who had stopped earlier. He'd moved into the car and was folded down so you couldn't see him at first. When he sat up, I could tell it was the same guy. He looked furious, like all anger. My heart started racing. The gas station was right there, and I told the woman to pull in. She didn't slow down. For a second, it felt like all the air had been sucked out of the car. Then it hit me she wasn't helping me out of kindness. She looked like a victim to it. I realized the man in the back must have forced her to pick me up and keep driving. He was probably controlling where we went. I tried to convince her to turn in. The man shouted at me to shut up and told her to keep driving. My voice felt small and useless over his yelling. We passed the turnoff and kept going, but then, suddenly, she made a sharp move. At the last second, she swerved into the gas station lane and slammed the brakes before hitting the pumps. The impact snapped us all to attention. She jumped out of the car and bolted. That was my cue. I didn't wait. I ran toward the gas station doors with her. Inside, she told the night clerk to call the police, and I watched through the glass as the man climbed into the front seat and drove off, disappearing into the night. After that, everything happened fast and slow at the same time. The clerk called the police. We gave our statements, and I sat shaking, trying to make sense of what had just happened. It matched the worst version of what I'd feared. The man had been prowling that road, stopping cars and forcing people into his vehicle. Both the woman and I had become his victims by chance. I was filled with a mix of relief and anger. Relief because we got away, and obvious anger at how close I'd been to something terrible. The woman later told me that she had been terrified the whole time, but found a moment to act. She could have kept driving when he ordered her to, and who knows what would have happened then. I'm grateful she chose to risk everything and pull into the gas station despite his threats. After the police arrived and took down what we could tell them, I remember sitting in my car, waiting for a tow, thinking about how quickly a normal night can turn into something dangerous. I kept replaying small details in my head. The man's smirk, the woman's blank stare, the way the trees looked like teeth in the dark. It taught me to trust that gut feeling, the one you get when something feels wrong. If I had ignored it and gotten into that first car, I don't want to think about what could have happened. And even though the drive had been tiring and the whole thing could have been framed as bad luck, it made me see how lucky we were that night. The woman who stopped had the courage to do something in the scariest of moments, and because of that, we both walked away. I still drive down long country roads sometimes, but I'm more careful now. I keep my phone charged. I watch for cars coming up behind me, and if someone offers a ride, I think twice before accepting. That night stayed with me for a long time, like a warning I could unignore. Not every hand that reaches out to help is free to choose, and sometimes danger hides in plain sight in the people who appear willing to help.